Hey all, and welcome to Shadow Space, and we're commenting on another BCP video. This is called Woke Democrat Governor Lashes Out Demanding Hakeem Jeffries Shut Up About Major Democrat Defeat. This was uploaded May 23rd. This is being recorded May 23rd, and links in the description. Also, it looks like Hakeem Jeffries is getting told what I've been saying the whole time, which is that he should just keep his big dumb mouth shut, which he can't seem to do.
Ultimately lost this, and you take personal responsibility, Mr. Leader. I mean, you ultimately lost this, and you take personal responsibility. You lost in the state Supreme Court.
Did the voters lose?
Well, Democrats did, and your law
Did
that
the
you
voters
passed.
lose?
You take personal responsibility.
Voters did when directly after you made your statement about how it was maximum warfare everywhere all the time, not only did Georgia strike down this map, but the Supreme Court then overturned and undid the Civil Rights Act. This is all your fault. This is not Trump. This is not Republicans. This is Democrats who just cannot control themselves.
Responsibility for investing so much time and resources, tens of millions of dollars, in ultimately fruitless effort.
We did the right thing, and this effort is not over. It's just getting started. And by the way, come back to me on November 4th when Democrats have taken back control of the House of Representatives. That's ultimately going to be, what matters.
Remember, he said this. If this doesn't happen, remember that he said this.
And if you don't because of this?
We are going to win the House of Representatives. I'm telling you that right now. I've been telling you that from the very beginning. And by the way, what math are people focused on when they think about the electoral environment that we're in? When Democrats took the House back in 2018, and at minimum, we're in the 2018 environment. When Democrats took the House back, we had to flip 24 seats in 2018. 24 seats, which people said was
impossible. Yeah, and you're losing districts. You're losing representation.
Impossible to do. We didn't just flip 24 seats in 2018. We flipped 40. And of those 40 seats, 31 were in districts that Donald Trump had just won.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about some more Democrat Party infighting, as it looks like there's now a divide between some Democrats on whether or not they should continue to fight this gerrymandering war. Now, as I've laid out in so many videos, the Democrats have lost, okay? Hakeem Jeffries can come out here and talk about how they're going to be fighting everywhere all the time, maximum warfare, right? Whatever, right? F around, find out. Doesn't matter. Democrats do not have any more juice to gerrymander. They don't, okay? Their blue states have already been gerrymandered to the max, okay? When they go on
national... because that isn't even the problem. It's the fact that non-blue states are now losing blue representation directly as a result of this, of him saying anything.
Television and pretend as if they're going to
taking no responsibility whatsoever. You're right. I shouldn't have said it was maximum warfare. And
or that they can.
We're in big trouble now.
They're full of.
No.
They may be able to do more in the future, right? But in 2026, before the midterms, there's not that much they can do. They lost, okay? Their efforts out in Virginia have officially backfired. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
See, it isn't just Virginia. It's all across the country now. Everywhere that had districts that drew along racial lines are now having their maps redrawn. And as far as it looks like, those redrawn maps are going to stay. Those are going to be the maps.
Democrats try to be a hog instead of stop.
Had they not made the Supreme Court for whatever reason, focus on the civil rights legislation, it wouldn't have happened. Like, maybe it wasn't him saying it, and it was something that was coming down the pipeline for a while now that eventually just came into the public eye.
Being at California, even it out with Texas, instead of stopping there, they continued to go, and that ultimately motivated the Republicans to redistrict their states, especially after the Supreme Court took a sledgehammer to
See, and this was what did it. If it were just the redistricting, it wouldn't have mattered. But it was the fact that now you can't draw Democrat districts based on racial lines.
the woke Voting Rights Act, which basically said that, hey, you can't have these racially drawn districts, aka black districts. Republicans said, okay, cool, we're going to redraw maps. President Trump wanted them to do that anyways, but I think that the Supreme Court really opened the door for it. And also on top of that, I think from a political perspective, what happened out in Virginia gave more justification for Republicans in the South to push forward with this, because Democrats have shown us what they really mean by protecting democracy, right? Our democracy. What they actually really mean is protecting their power and control, okay? And they have no
usually.
issues whatsoever taking away any type of representation for conservative voters, Republican voters, Trump voters in blue states. They showed us that in Virginia. So, hey, we might as well do what we got to do in order to stop Democrats from their full-blown authoritarian takeover. I mean, let's be real. The whole Northeast has been gerrymandered in favor of Democrats. They showed us a long time ago, right, that what their actual agenda is, and Republicans are really just catching up and trying to level the playing field. And Democrats hate a level playing field more than anything. This is why they're now freaking out over losing.
I don't care. Redistricting should happen. If there are rules that say that people can gerrymander, then obviously they're going to use them. So one side can't get mad at the other. It's really just
the gerrymandering war. So with that being said, Abigail Spanberger is coming out and saying, hey, let's stop, right? Let's chill out on this gerrymandering stuff, this redistricting stuff. This is not really helping us right now. We need to chill. Hakeem Jeffries, on the other hand, is talking junk, right? Continuing to make threats that he's not going to be able to execute
keeps
on.
running his mouth.
there's
Doesn't know when to
infighting,
stop.
right, amongst Democrats in regards to what they should actually do. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. With Democratic efforts to redraw Virginia's congressional boundaries in shambles for now, two central figures in the fight are at odds over what to do next. Representative Hakeem
See, because everyone already knows that there's no unity in the Democrat Party.
Jeffries of New York, the
This is
minority
just a
leader,
given.
continues to push for, quote, maximum warfare
Everywhere, all the time.
vowing
Yeah.
with a phrase he borrowed from Republicans to redraft lines to give Democrats an advantage not only in Virginia but across the country before the 2028 election. Governor Abigail Spanberger of Virginia, whose approval ratings dropped precipitously as she campaigned for her state's redistricting referendum, is urging her party to drop its quest for partisan advantage in favor of a more pressing issue, winning the midterms. Quote, it is outrageously premature of us to be talking about any sort of redistricting or map-changing effort when we have to win the most consequential midterms of my lifetime this November.
See, because this is why the districting is really irrelevant. Getting the people that you want in those seats is what matters. Where the lines are drawn that determine where those districts are not.
Ms. Spanberger said in an interview this week, taking an unsubtle jab at Mr. Jeffries and reflecting broader disquiet amongst Democrats about how to counter Republican gerrymanders after the Virginia State Supreme Court ruled the referendum there unconstitutional. Yeah. So what she's pushing back on are reports on Democrats, including Hakeem Jeffries, being on phone calls, in meetings, discussing overthrowing the Virginia Supreme Court, right? Forcing all of the justices except maybe like one, right, to retire from the court, right, with age limits, and then replacing them in order to re-implement this map, right? Basically, Democrats are openly discussing overthrowing the Supreme Court in Virginia, right, because they didn't get
Yeah.
their way. And these are the same people who
Well,
tell you that
I
they
mean,
care.
they are literally rigging the game just so they can win. They sit here and moralize about how that behavior is bad, and yet now they are engaging in that behavior.
About democracy, right? They care about the judicial system. They care about the separation of powers, right? This is what they claim they care about. But yet these are the same people who openly had a serious discussion about overthrowing the Supreme Court because they couldn't get their way, right? Out in Virginia. They're full-blown authoritarians. So what Abigail Spanberger is saying is that, listen, my approval ratings dropped because of this, right? This effort is not a popular effort. The only thing you're doing.
No, because it's not just a Hakeem Jeffries issue. It is a Democrat issue. You speak on behalf of your party. The more you say things like this, the more you damage the Democrat brand, the overall Democrat brand. Democrats everywhere who call themselves Democrats are on board with this, whether you want it to be or not.
The point is that you're pissing people off because you're taking away representation for those individuals, right? And we should go ahead and take this L, right, and keep it moving and not keep pressing on this issue that they clearly are losing on. Okay? That's what she's saying. So she's straight up going after Hakeem Jeffries.
So, again, it's one thing to be congratulatory about the fact that they got this map. It's another thing to be like, we're going to stick it to Republicans, fuck around and find out, we're going to win all these places, and just, you guys are going to be the big losers on this one.
The issue burst into view this week on the sidelines of a policy conference hosted by the Center for American Progress in Washington. Ms. Spanberger said her party's continued focus on redistricting was a distraction from addressing affordability, President Trump's leadership, and other issues that she said would matter far more to voters this year. Yeah, so, I mean, here's the thing, right? The reason why Democrats don't want to focus on affordability is because they don't have anything for affordability, right? Even Abigail Spanberger doesn't have a solution for quote-unquote affordability. Look at the laws that she's passing, the policies that she's pushing in her state. But most importantly, look at these big blue liberal states, these big blue liberal cities that are the most unaffordable in the country, right? Democrats do not have a solution for affordability. Democrats are largely a part of the reason why we're in this situation. So expecting them to address affordability is nonsensical, right? They would much rather focus on gerrymandering and hating Trump than, the actual real issues because they don't have any solutions.
Yeah, they don't have a platform. They don't actually have ideas.
For the real issues.
The ideas that they have, they don't actually know if they're going to work or not.
For years, Democrats have cast themselves as the party of good governance, offering support for initiatives that mandate nonpartisan redistricting. Well, they never believed in that. What they actually believed in was having a nonpartisan commission that favors Democrats, right? That has the illusion of nonpartisanship, but is actually partisan, right? You fill the board with a bunch of liberals, okay? You say, oh, well, see, it's nonpartisan, right? But everybody on the board is liberal, and they gerrymander things in favor of Democrats, right, in Democrat states. And yeah, that's what they actually really mean, right? That's what they actually really want. Because let's be honest, okay? If Democrats actually believed in nonpartisan redistricting, then how did New England end up all blue, despite having 40% Republican voters, right? How did it end up all blue? Because they actually do believe in partisan redistricting, right? In fact, that's their default.
They believe in gerrymandering. Which, if there are laws that allow you to gerrymander, then it's perfectly acceptable to do so. But
stance, right?
I don't know how you could say that you were being bipartisan when you were purposefully drawing districts to favor one party over another. Instead of representing the actual districts the way that they vote, you decide what the districts are.
Default stance is we should rig things in favor of Democrats, right? That's the default. And again, that's why Democrats get so upset when Republicans level the playing field, is because by default, they believe that they should be able to cheat, right? That they should have an unfair advantage by default, right? An unfair advantage for Democrats is a level playing field in their eyes, right? That's how they operate. But they also want to win, prompting Ms. Spanberger to focus on November. Quote, anytime someone, whether it's Hakeem or anyone else, talks about some other point off in the future, it is a distraction from the task at hand, which is winning in November, she said. Wow, she name dropped this guy, right? So it's not just a subtle jab. She's basically name dropping him.
He's the one who's saying it.
Calling him out directly, saying, hey, you need to shut up, right? Stop talking about this. Let's focus on something else. As for talk of redistricting, the governor said, quote, that time is over now, aka Democrats have been defeated, right? That's what she's saying. Mr. Jeffries, who declined to comment for this article, also mentioned the goal of flipping multiple seats in Virginia this year during his public remarks this week. At the conference, he pledged that Democrats would again seek to
See, because why did you need the new maps in order to do that?
Virginia's maps in the next 2 years. Quote, we're going to work as hard as we can to advance of 2028 to restore that 10-1 map because that's what the voters decided would be appropriate moving forward, Mr. Jeffries said at the conference. Yeah. So remember when they told us that this would be temporary, right? That they were just doing this because, you know, they wanted to level the playing field going into the midterms. Well, turns out that was a lie because Hakeem Jeffries is openly discussing doing this again going into 2028. So this is not just about Trump. This is about Democrats trying to orchestrate a permanent power grab, right? Yeah. They try to go, well, it's temporary. It's only temporary. It's only to fight Trump. Well, Trump is not on the ballot in 2028, right? Trump is not on the ballot. So why are they trying to do this in 2028? Why are they still trying to do this beyond the midterms? Because it wasn't just about the midterms.
No. Well,
it was always about a permanent power grab.
Because it's what you say. It's about Democrat control. It's about power and control. That doesn't stop after Trump. It's a relentless march forward.
Because they know coming up in 2030 that the census is not going to work out in their favor because of all the people who have fled these blue states. The dust-up comes during a week of internal conflict amongst Democrats who spent Thursday confounded by the Democrat National Committee's release of an error-written draft report about how and why then Vice President Kamala Harris lost in the 2024 election to Donald J. Trump. Yeah. So we may discuss a little bit more about that coming up here in the future. But for this video, again, this is Abigail Spanberger and Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah. The twin disputes have put the party in disarray at a moment when Mr. Trump's approval ratings are sinking under the weight of his unpopular war in Iran and increased prices of gasoline, groceries, and other essential items. Even as some Senate Republicans on Thursday were bucking Mr. Trump's demands, Democrats created their own challenging news cycle by releasing the 2024 autopsy. Ms. Spanberger's and Mr. Jeffries' differing approaches reflect a simmering debate among Democrat leaders and voters about how best to win the midterm elections. Ms. Spanberger, who swept into Congress in 2018 and into the Virginia Executive Mansion last year with a disciplined economic message, counts herself among those Democrats who would prefer a focus on cost of living concerns, which they believe are central to regaining control of the House.
Apparently have been a different approach to what Democrats should do moving forward into the future, okay, on this issue, right? Abigail Spanberger is telling Hakeem Jeffries to shut up. And I think one of the reasons why she is doing that is because a blue wave is not guaranteed, right? A blue wave, if it actually was something that Democrats were confident in, like they claimed, then there would be no real reason why they would be so desperate to continue this gerrymandering fight. And the reason why is because ultimately at the end of the day, if you really got the juice like that, then, you know, the voters are going to vote, and it doesn't matter how much Republicans gerrymander their states or redistrict their states.
Well, you have to know the makeup of these states. A lot of the problems in a lot of these places is even the local governments are Republican controlled. You can't expect a state that's Republican controlled to make maps for Democrats.
Democrats really got the juice. They're going to win regardless, right?
It's
especially if you consider
someone who doesn't know the game, who doesn't know anything, who doesn't know what they're talking about, telling people what to do like he knows what's going on.
the fact that, you know, Republicans, when they redistrict, they have to thin out some of the red areas, right? And that can backfire. Okay, redistricting and gerrymandering does not come without its, you know, pros and cons, right? The con is,
and it's why you shouldn't do it just to draw things based on party lines. You shouldn't be doing it from an antagonistic position. That doesn't do anyone any good. You shouldn't be treating it like a war. You should be treating it like a process of democracy.
that, hey,
It's not a sword, it's a tool. It's a hammer.
You're thinning out districts. You're making it easier for certain districts that before were, you know, red or solidly red. They now become like slightly red, right? Yeah, that makes it, you know, kind of one of those things where in an election cycle where, you know, Democrats, if they do overwhelmingly, well, during the midterms, right, when it comes to voting, then it can backfire big time, right? You could see districts that once were red flip blue, okay? So, yeah, I really don't understand why Democrats are so hell-bent on trying to continue this gerrymandering fight that they're going to lose if they were so confident that they're going to win the midterms. But the reality is that they're not that confident because the numbers suggest that is really a wild card in regards to whether or not Democrats will actually be able to win. So without further ado, let's get into this segment from CNN in which they basically admit that, there is not a guaranteed blue wave that is coming up here in the midterms.
We don't normally focus on sort of the variance in polls, but this is a time when it might really matter.
It might really matter. I'm going to put on my professor cap here, Professor Enton, Professor Berman.
Somehow I have a feeling it's probably not going to matter.
In the room with you, our dear students. And I think that, you know, sometimes we sort of get lost, right? We focus in on one poll and one narrative. And sometimes there are competing narratives, and I think it's worth just taking a step back because I think some people are like, well, the polls said one thing and another thing happened. Actually, the polls here differ quite a bit. Democrats lead in choice and choice for Congress. Look at this. New York Times poll came out yesterday, it's 10. That matches with Marist, that was 10. But the Washington Post came out within the last month, that was 5. Fox News came out in the last month, that was 5. And then the CNN poll that we were discussing last week, right? That was a 3-point lead. There's quite this bit of variance that is going on right here. And you know what? This is actually a good thing. This is a normal thing. This is what happens when you have margins of error that are going out there. You'd expect an average, but then you have a range of possible results around that average, and we're not necessarily sure which one is right if the election were held today. And of course, there's the extra variance of the fact that the election is not being held until November.
All right, a range of possible results. And in this case, you know...
You want to hit a pen, Johnny?
I'm going to hit a pen. I'm going to hit a pen. There we go.
There you go.
And in this case, this result would be wildly different than that result.
Right. Okay. So you see, this is, of course, the choice, the national popular vote for the House. But what does that mean in terms of seats? What's the difference between, let's say, Democrats winning by 10 versus winning by 3? And this is where it gets really interesting. Okay. So even if you take redistricting into account, given a popular vote win of, let's say, 3 points, what would that mean for Democratic House gains? They gain probably somewhere, an estimate is between 0 and 6 seats, which at the upper end of that range would be enough to take back the House. But in the lower end of that range, that would not be. That would be Republicans holding on. But what about that 10-point lead that you see in Marist, the New York Times? Well, that would be a ginormous blowout. And this is just an estimate. It could be higher, a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But we're talking about an estimate of a Democratic gain of between 20 to 30 seats or more. They could be ending up 245 seats or north of there potentially versus being stuck, let's say, 213, 214, 215, 216, maybe barely getting to a majority. So look, when you see this range of potential results, I want you to keep in mind, yes, Democrats are probably favored to take back the House. It's by no means a guarantee, but they could end up blowing the Republicans right out of the water. All of that is within the margin of error at this point, especially given that we're months from the election.
Yes, the difference between
so basically what he's saying is that when you look at the margin of error, all possibilities on the table, right? Democrats could end up winning the national vote, right, the popular vote, by 3 points, and ultimately, they still would not be able to take the House.
They'd still lose, basically.
And again, that's within the margin of error, right? So that is a very realistic possibility. So, again, that's what he's admitting. Okay, now, obviously, the blue wave scenario here is also on the table, right, where they gain, 20, 30 seats or whatever. They win by 10 points. But again, the problem for Democrats is that all the possibilities are currently within the margin of error. So we really don't know. And I think that's why you have Hakeem Jeffries freaking out, right? Trying to push for more gerrymandering, even though they really can't do more, is because they're not that confident that there's going to be a blue wave. Okay? The data suggests that as of right now, it is not guaranteed that Democrats will take back the House, right? It is not guaranteed that there's going to be a blue wave. This is why I've been saying, hey, let's pump our brakes. And again, we don't know. There's a lot of time between now and the midterms. However, time is ticking, right? And I think that Trump definitely needs to turn some things around, specifically when it comes to the economy. Hopefully we can get this Iran conflict wrapped up. Who knows? Okay. But I'm just saying that there's still enough time for things to change.
Because even like Venezuela, what is the current status on Venezuela? What is the current status on Maduro in his trial? Like, is any of this happening?
Significantly. And again, I think that's why Democrats are freaking out, because there is no guarantee based off the polling right now, right? All this being within the margin of error, that there's going to be a blue wave.
No,
right?
it's really going to depend on how all these things progress as the time goes on.
They can't be very confident that there's going to be a blue wave, considering how there's a possibility that they could win the midterms when it comes to the national vote or the popular vote, and still lose the House, right? Or still not be able to take the House. So that's what is being explained here on CNN.
Maybe not taking it and taking it by a lot. That's the variance in the polls right now. So, Professor Renton, what does one do? What does one do at this stage of the game when you have these polls showing all these different things?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Professor Berman. And what we would do is we might average the polls together, and you can see that there's been a clear shift towards the Democrats in the average poll. Choice for Congress margin. You go back to Election Day last year, in November of 2025, Democrats were ahead by 4. They're now ahead by 7 in the average poll at this point. And that, if that average held, that will result very much assuredly a clear Democratic majority. And then the last little thing that I will note here is just, Kalshi prediction market chance that Democrats in the midterms, 218 House, and then let's say gaining in the Senate, but not necessarily taking it back. Look at this. 69% chance, a very nice 69% chance. So Democrats are still in the catbird seat here. They're likely to gain the House, likely to gain the Senate, but it's by no means a guarantee.
Harold Denton, thank you very much for that. An important look at what the data is saying.
Yeah. So that's what we have happening here, right? There's infighting amongst Democrats, amongst leadership, about whether or not they should continue to push this gerrymandering thing. And if they want to do that, go for it, right? Go for it. That's what they want to focus on. Regardless, I personally believe that it's less about Democrats and what they're going to do going into the midterms, and more so about Trump. And if the economy can start to turn around and get into the right direction going into the midterms, I think that is the one thing that will definitely make it less likely that there will be a blue wave or that Democrats are going to win back the House or take the Senate. I think at this point
That is definitely what he needs to start doing, is he needs to start actually living up to some of the promises that he made on the campaign trail. At this point, about the only thing that he said he was going to do when he got into office was release the Epstein files. He hasn't solved Ukraine. He's now increased conflicts in Venezuela and in Cuba and in Iran.
Really about how much better will the economy get going into the midterms. That's what it really, really, really comes down to at this point. We're going to see. But as of right now, even in the current situation that we're in, the Democrats still have some real question marks about whether or not there's going to be a blue wave, whether or not they're actually going to take back the House and take the Senate. Is certainly not guaranteed, and they're not doing as well as they historically have done at this point in time, right? Going into the midterms, being out of power, they're not doing as well as they should be doing, and that certainly is a cause for concern because ultimately, at the end of the day, Democrats can't stand without Trump, right? And at some point, Trump is going to be gone, and when Trump is gone, Democrats are going to have to find a way to stand their own 2 feet. So again, this is why I think Abigail Spanberger said that this is the midterms of their lifetime, because ultimately it really is for the Democrat Party. If they lose the midterms, if they don't take back the House at the very least, okay, they're cooked. They're very cooked. Okay, if there's no blue wave, they are super cooked going into the future. So yeah, it is kind of do or die at this point for Democrats, right? Their party is on life support. So we're gonna see. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and
Yeah, because like all of the yelling that they're doing now about this doesn't matter. Making sure that these new districts that they're drawing flip blue is what's important, not the what the map looks like. Virginia could redraw that map, and all of those blue districts, or a lot of those blue districts, could flip red. Like, it wouldn't matter. It's it it really doesn't matter, and that's really all there is to it.